Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The historical account of scientific communication is one of accelerating velocity, a persistent quest to shorten the interval between discovery and dissemination. For centuries, this process remained tethered to the physical constraints of print, a sedate, gentlemanly exchange of paper mediated by the slow-moving machinery of scholarly societies and commercial publishers. The 2001 paper by Paul Ginsparg, titled simply The Los Alamos National Laboratory Preprint Archive, serves as a primary document chronicling the moment this paradigm was decisively and permanently fractured. The paper is at once a technical manual, a sociological treatise, and a historical record of a quiet revolution initiated within a specialized subfield of theoretical physics. It details the creation of a system so elemental in its design and so profound in its effect that it fundamentally rewired the conduct of modern science. The document itself, written a decade after the system's inception, offers a reflective and granular exposition of the architecture and philosophy that came to define the Archive, the enduring name for the preprint server born at Los Alamos. The intellectual landscape preceding the archive's launch in August 1991 was one of nascent digital potential overlaying a deeply entrenched tradition. Physicists, particularly in high-energy theory, had a long-standing culture of sharing preprints. These were manuscripts circulated among colleagues for comment prior to their formal submission to a peer-reviewed journal. This practice created an informal, high-speed communication channel for a privileged inner circle of researchers at elite institutions. The primary mechanism was the Postal Service, a system whose limitations were becoming increasingly apparent. A crucial antecedent, explicitly acknowledged by Ginsparg, was the Stanford Public Information Retrieval System, or SPIRES, at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, which maintained a bibliographic database of high-energy physics preprints. While invaluable for tracking literature, SPIRES was a catalogue of physical documents, its utility bounded by the speed of mail. The more immediate catalyst was an email list maintained by a colleague, Joanne Cohn. She manually collected TX source files of preprints from authors and distributed them to a subscribed list of a few hundred physicists. This demonstrated a clear demand for electronic distribution, yet its manual nature made it inherently unscalable. Ginsparg's contribution was to perceive in this ad hoc system the potential for a fully automated, global repository. Upon his arrival at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, Ginsparg found himself within a unique ecosystem of technical resources and intellectual freedom. The laboratory's robust internet connectivity and computational infrastructure provided the necessary substrate for his experiment. The 2001 paper details the remarkable economy of the initial system, a testament to elegant and pragmatic engineering. The archive was built upon a foundation of simple, robust, and widely available tools. The primary user interface was electronic mail. A researcher would send their paper, encoded in the TX typesetting language, as an email to the server. The choice of TX, a standard declarative markup language for mathematical and scientific documents conceived by Donald Knuth, was a critical and enabling decision. It provided a machine-readable format that could be reliably compiled into a high-quality, printable document without human intervention. The server itself was a collection of scripts, likely written in Perl or a similar scripting language, running on a basic workstation. These scripts were automated to run at regular intervals using a standard Unix scheduling utility known as a cron job. The process was direct. An email would arrive, a script would pass its header for metadata like author and title, extract the TX source, compile it into a PostScript file, and then file both the source and the compiled output into a publicly accessible directory structure organized by date and unique identifier. A daily email would then be sent to all subscribers, listing the abstracts of the day's submissions. This was the entirety of the initial mechanism, a system devoid of complex databases or graphical user interfaces, yet perfectly suited to its purpose and its audience. The immediate impact on the community of theoretical high-energy physicists was seismic. The velocity of information exchange increased by orders of magnitude. A discovery made in a laboratory in Geneva could be read, analyzed, and built upon by a theorist in California within hours, bypassing the months or even years of the traditional journal publication cycle. The forum for cutting-edge debate shifted almost overnight from the pages of journals like Physical Review Letters to the daily listings of the Hepth Archive for high-energy physics theory. The journal retained its function as the ultimate archival record, the final stamp of peer-reviewed approval, but the preprint server became the living, breathing frontier of the discipline. This created a peculiar temporal dynamic where a significant portion of a field's intellectual life occurred in a prepublication space, a reality that persists to this day. Concrete examples abound from the vibrant, period of the second superstring revolution in the mid-1990s, where pivotal ideas concerning debrains and string duality, developed by figures like Joseph Polchinski and Edward Witten, unfolded in a rapid-fire exchange of preprints on the archive. The server was the indispensable arena for this work. The system's evolution, as chronicled in Ginsparg's retrospective and observable in its subsequent history, was a process of organic growth and adaptation. What began as a tool for a few hundred high-energy theorists quickly attracted the attention of adjacent fields. Mathematicians, observing the success in physics, requested their own sections, leading to the creation of the Algol archive for algebraic geometry. This was followed by sections for astrophysics, condensed matter physics, and eventually computer science, quantitative biology, and even finance. The server's architecture proved remarkably scalable. Its relocation from Los Alamos to Cornell University in 2001, the same year as Ginsparg's paper, signaled its transition from a personal project to a piece of essential community and scholarly infrastructure. The simple email and FTP interfaces of the early days were eventually complemented and largely superseded by a World Wide Web interface, which provided more sophisticated tools for searching, browsing, and submission. Later developments included the implementation of an application programming interface, or API, allowing other services to programmatically interact with the archive's data, and integration with authentication systems like the Open Researcher and Contributor ID, or the reception of the archive was far from universally celebratory. While researchers embraced it with fervour, the traditional publishing industry viewed it with considerable apprehension. Ginsparg's paper alludes to the concerns voiced by publishers, who saw the free and immediate availability of research manuscripts as a direct threat to their subscription-based business models. Some journals initially refused to consider papers that had appeared on the preprint server, treating it as a form of prior publication. This position proved untenable, as a wholesale rejection of archive submissions would have meant cutting themselves off from the most significant work in entire fields of science. The core critique revolved around the absence of formal, for submission peer review. Critics worried that the archive would become a dumping ground for unsubstantiated claims, pseudoscience, and low-quality work, a fire hose of information that would overwhelm researchers. Ginsparg's design, however, incorporated a subtle and effective form of quality control. It was a system based on community trust and reputation. While there was no formal review, a lightweight endorsement system was eventually implemented in some fields, requiring a new submitter to be vouched for by an established author. More fundamentally, the system operated in the open. A submission was associated with an author and their institution, placing their professional reputation on the line. The community of experts proved to be an exceptionally efficient filter. Valuable work was rapidly identified, cited, and discussed, while erroneous or trivial submissions were simply The creation of the archive was influenced by a confluence of factors. The aforementioned work of Joanne Cohn and the existence of the Spires database were direct inspirations. The intellectual tradition of preprint sharing in physics provided the cultural readiness. The technical substrate was provided by the development of the Internet, the ubiquity of email, and the genius of Donald Knuth's TX, which solved the thorny problem of transmitting complex mathematical typography in a standardized format. Ginsparg himself, a string theorist with a strong command of computational tools, was uniquely positioned at the intersection of these developments. His singular insight was to automate and institutionalize an existing informal practice, recognizing that the technology had rendered the old physical limitations obsolete. He was the right person, with the right skills, right place, at precisely the right historical. The influence of Ginsparg's work on subsequent initiatives is impossible to overstate. The arXiv became the foundational template for the entire open access movement, a global campaign to make scholarly literature freely available to all. It served as the prime working example in the discussions that led to landmark declarations like the 2002 Budapest Open Access Initiative. The success of the archive demonstrated that a scholarly communication system could thrive outside the confines of commercial publishing and that researchers could effectively manage their own dissemination channels. This directly inspired the creation of a host of similar preprint servers tailored to other disciplines. The Social Science Research Network, or SSRN, adopted a similar model for fields like economics and law. In the life sciences, the creation of bioRxiv in 2013 and medRxiv in 2019, operated by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, represented a direct intellectual inheritance from the arXiv. These platforms adopted the core Ginsparg model of rapid, author-driven dissemination, though often with slightly different moderation policies, suited to the ethical considerations of biological and medical research. The influence extends to institutional repositories, where universities now host the scholarly output of their own faculty, the policies of funding agencies, many of which now mandate that research they support be made publicly accessible. A deeper analysis of the 2001 paper reveals a profound understanding of the sociology of science. Ginsparg's project was a technical solution to a social problem. It addressed the inequities of the old system, where access to the latest research was often a function of one's institutional prestige or geographic location. With the archive, a graduate student at a small university in a developing country had the exact same access to a new paper as a tenured professor at Princeton. It democratized access to the frontier of knowledge. Furthermore, the archive subtly altered the function of scientific credit. It introduced a formal system for establishing priority of discovery, with each submission receiving a permanent, time-stamped identifier. A claim was established the moment it appeared on the server, a feature that became critically important in fast-moving and competitive fields. At the same time, this acceleration has produced its own set of cultural pressures. The pressure to post quickly can sometimes lead to the circulation of less polished work, and the sheer volume of submissions, now numbering in the hundreds of thousands per year, presents its own navigational challenges. The archive solved the problem of access, but in doing so, it amplified the problem of attention, a challenge that modern science continues to grapple. In conclusion, Paul Ginsparg's 2001 paper is far more than a technical report. It is the definitive account of a pivotal event in the history of science and communication. It documents the construction of a system built from the simplest of digital parts, a system that harnessed the latent power of a network to connect a global community of scholars. The Los Alamos National Laboratory Preprint archive and its descendant the RZIV was a sociological intervention disguised as a software project. It rebalanced power from publishers to authors, flattened hierarchies, and fundamentally redefined the temporality of scientific discovery. The paper stands as a monument to the idea that transformative innovation often arises from a clear assessment of a community's needs and the pragmatic application of available tools. It tells the story of how a small group of physicists, seeking a better way to talk to one another, ended up building a new foundation for the entire edifice of modern scholarship. The legacy of this work is inscribed in the daily habits of millions of researchers worldwide, a system so foundational and so ubiquitous that it is now difficult to imagine science without it.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.